Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources. More importantly, though, this podcast is all about the transition out of sport. It's such a difficult thing with identity crisis and financial literacy. And we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their transition out of sport ultimately to successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. So excited today to have Mike Cavallaro. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Rob. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So Mike was a college basketball player at McAllister in Minnesota. Unfortunately, his career got cut short with an injury, which he'll tell us about later. After trying a bunch of things, which again, we'll get into that too, which is going to kind of shape his whole journey into what he's doing today. Mike ended up starting out in finance, got into investment banking, investing, and ultimately he is now the founder of Move More Collective, which is a really exciting venture and definitely looking forward to hear more about it. So Mike, talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you leading up into college?
Honestly, it's the first thing that I can remember. Being the son of two former athletes that were well known and respected in our hometown, there wasn't really another path, and I'm grateful for that kind of predating me. And so, having my dad as a coach growing up, whether the sport was soccer, baseball, football, he was always there on the sidelines, and they were both always there, at every sporting event I had, and was kind of thrown right into it to try to find myself, figure out, what sport could teach me in my early years. And so, I don't think there's any better way to hone your social skills, to get a baseline for time management and discipline at a very early age. And I'm not sure where I'd be today without having those experiences and kind of being pushed in that direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And was there a dream of being a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
Yeah, of course. If you're growing up playing sports, you're always going to be the next Michael Jordan or Tom Brady in my case. For me, it was basketball. Both parents were basketball players. And, so basketball kind of grabbed my heart early on. It's something that kind of progressed over time, started to get into different sports, lacrosse, baseball, football, things that seem to be more socially, cool, if you will. During the high school years, my heart was always with basketball. And so I was always going to be, for me, it wasn't Michael Jordan. Sorry for everybody watching. It was always LeBron James. And that was going to be me. I was going to be playing at that level.
Yeah, that's great. Like for me, I always say I want to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, talent wasn't there. So now I do podcasts and I'm an entrepreneur.
Look, that's fine too.
Yeah. So let's talk about education on transition out of sport. When you were in school, was there any kind of, not just like a one-day workshop, but classes or multiple workshops where the school was helping both the current athletes and alumni athletes as well?
Yeah, look, I was very fortunate. From a young age, I was kind of put in really good educational situations. My parents recognized early on, just after middle school, that I needed to be pushed a little bit harder. Sent me to an incredible school in Moses Brown in Providence, Rhode Island, where I was surrounded by a whole lot of people that were a whole lot smarter than I was. And then from there, it kind of fed into my college years of going off to McAllister, where that kind of same pattern persisted. And I think from a networking perspective, from an athlete angle, I think Moses Brown did a pretty good job of bringing back some of the athletes that came before me. And they had a relatively strong athlete alumni network that would come back to visit, and that had a lot of affiliation with the high school. McAllister as well, I think, they were growing in that direction, and that was something that they did. From a networking standpoint, it was still very much the onus was on you as the athlete to really put yourself out there. Like the former athletes and alumni can come back, but it was really on you to kind of develop those relationships and follow up with those relationships to start something that was a little bit more so than just, hey, how are you? You used to play here and now I play here. So I think it was less structured and a lot more on you as the athlete, the current athlete, to do the work than anything else.
Yeah, and we'll get a little more to that in a couple minutes. Like, from an education standpoint, like something we've talked about doing is I think there's, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's mental health, whether it's sales, there's different types of programs, and most schools don't do it. They're getting a little bit better today. And a lot of times my guests are a little bit older, like myself. Well, not quite as old as me, maybe, but their programs didn't exist. And like we've talked about bringing resource partners together into these athletic programs, not only for their current athletes, but for the alumni athletes as well. Because it'd be great as a when you're done playing, whether it's, you're done playing college or you're done playing professional, if you're fortunate to get there, it'd be nice to be able to go back to your alma mater and tap into like, okay, well, what do I do next? How
Right.
do I prepare for my career? How do I prepare for my finances, whatever it might be? And I think even from a recruiting perspective, is I think if you, as a parent of a high school age athlete, if you're looking at say 4 or 5 different schools, they all pretty much have the same credentials, but like this one school has programs like this in place. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think I was right on the cusp of when LinkedIn started to become a really popular tool for reconnecting with people or connecting up the ladder to get you where you need to be. And so I had the benefit of that as a tool, and definitely saw gaps in, where it, excelled and where it came up short. And so I was very fortunate that that was kind of my timeline, and kind of just wish there was more focused or more dedicated tools that kind of helped me get to that next level through my network.
Yeah. Now we'll kind of drill a little more into networking, connecting, and talk about the importance of doing while you're still playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, playing the game, post playing the game, the networking elements. First of all, your teammates are your network, right? You're in the trenches with those guys day in, day out. You're leading them or through battle, and so those are, that's your closest network. But it goes beyond that, right? To the whole athletic community. When you kind of wear the identity of an athlete, it goes beyond just your sport. It kind of transcends into all the different sports on campus, whether that's at the high school or the college level. And I still maintain a lot of those relationships to this day. I'm fortunate to say a lot of my brothers on the football field and the basketball court have gone on to do amazing things at firms like Thoma Bravo and turn out to be doctors and really kind of grow. And so they've been amazing sounding boards, and just to continuously push me. I think a network is there to to continually make you better, as well as kind of afford you opportunities that you may have not have had otherwise. So I think networking through sport is probably the most powerful element of sport, probably right up there with discipline and time management.
Yeah, and I love you brought up a couple of key points. And sometimes I think you're in my head already with like the next question that I'm going to ask you. So he prepped for this, okay? He watched some podcasts.
Not that
He
crazy.
knows.
This is organic. This is
Yeah,
authentic.
yeah. I'm messing with you. Anyway, I think that a couple things there. One, we talk about even networking at a young age, like even in high school, because like you brought up, you've got your teammates, your brothers, your sisters, whatever sport you're playing, and so you never keep in touch with them, and then as you continue to move on, the same thing, because you never know where people will be, whether it's your teammates, their parents, coaches. So it's important to do that, and while you're relevant playing the game too, because people know who you are. And that's something we've talked about. I've talked to some agents before, and they've said, I got this guy. He played, NFL. He's done, and they're expecting maybe to get this lucrative job, and they don't necessarily get that because they didn't build those relationships. It's people that are building the relationships, and I know this is all in your world, and we're going to talk about more later. But the other thing I like that you said is kind of that cross networking, and I bring that up a lot lately. Is just that it seems like it's very siloed by sport, but I think it also depends maybe on the size of the school as well, because I think like some of
Absolutely.
these some of these Division 1 programs, like the football players, like they might not necessarily network with the basketball players or the baseball players, and across sports. And you brought up, I think it's so important because the athlete has a certain DNA. And I think that just kind of like the affinity relationship that you have with other athletes, same as with alumni, I think is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think first thing I want to address from that is obviously it's helpful to network while you're still quote unquote relevant. But I think anybody that's been an athlete and sees that you have an athletic past at any level of progression is certainly going to recognize that and immediately feel like they have an additional connection to you and want to help. So regardless of if it's in real time or maybe looking at hindsight and saying, hey, I was an athlete or this is kind of what I did accomplish, there's tons of value in either way. I think as far as the cross networking component goes, you're seeing it more and more, right? There's almost a pairing, at least through my experience. Yes, college campus size or just campus size in general plays a large role in that, with how close you can get to other teams. But I found that there's, frequently across, different campuses and friends that I've had, there's been a semi pairing off of like a sister team and a brother team, whether it's, the football team and the girls soccer team or whatever it is. Any kind of cross pollination like that is super cool and just helps to extend that network even further. I think we need to see a lot more of that. And you see these, athletics, in the, the athlete councils that are popping up on campuses or that have been on campuses for quite some time. And it's really about unifying those, the teams, and everyone's after the same goals and competitive spirit.
I was funny. I was talking to one of my previous guests just recently, talking about I do a networking event for my podcast guests. So you'll get to join that one and the next one that we do. Basically, it's kind of cool to see because I've had athletes, I've had NFL players, Major League Baseball, I've had Olympic swimmers, I've had MMA fighters, snowboarders. So it's just cool to see these athletes getting together, rolling up their sleeves and saying, how can we help each other with our business, which kind of parlays into what we we're just speaking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of that network effect, right? We all want to see each other succeed because we've been in the trenches and now we're coming out to find what we're doing post all.
Yeah, it's a common bond. I mean, a lot of us started playing sports when we were like, 5 years old. You play your whole life through. It's just there's a lot of camaraderie there and stories, regardless of what the sport is. So let's switch gears and let's talk about alumni engagement. And you touched on a little bit about your high school, but when you were at McAllister, were athletes coming back, but not just for like that homecoming game, but were they coming back to work with the younger athletes that are there now?
Yeah, look, the head coach that had brought me in, Tim Whittle, was actually extremely good about kind of reaching out and trying to get former athletes, former basketball players in my case, to come back to campus, spend time with the current athletes. We did. We were fortunate enough to have a decently tight alumni network in that regard. I wouldn't say it was every week, every month, but it was a couple times a year that they'd come back, play pickup and take the younger guys out for dinner. And that was probably part of that, small liberal arts school cohesion. So I'm not going to say that's incredibly transferable to other establishments as well. But I would say that there was a decent amount of alumni engagement. And like I was saying, it was really on you to kind of continue the conversation from there, right? They were there. You start to develop a relationship, but that relationship only develops over time and continued contact. And so it was up to you whether you kind of made good on the fact that coach was bringing former athletes back, or you kind of just lost the opportunity to add them to your network.
Okay, good. So now there comes a question. So I kind of alluded to this off air here, but so the first question, okay, actually they're kind of a two-part question. We're going to play a little Back to the Future game. So we're going to get into the DeLorean and we're going to hop back to freshman year at McAllister. What advice, 10 words or less, would you give to freshman Mike?
10 words or less that I would give to freshman. Man, this does
freshman
really
freshman Mike to you.
Freshman me. You don't know everything. Keep your head down. Stay coachable.
That was good. And I think you're pretty close. I mean, sometimes it's
like
funny
8, 9.
I asked that question like, okay, so 1, 2, 3, or so totally they're stunned and they just don't, they're not sure how to answer that question. So all right, so then fast forward to senior Mike. What advice would you give to him?
You've learned a lot, but you still have more to learn. I think it's about keeping that open mind on both sides, right? Both from the beginning and even after you've kind of spent time in the ecosystem, realizing that there's still so much to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk now about transition out of sport. And we're going to cover this probably in 2 phases as we talked about. First phase, talk about you had an injury that ended your career. So kind of talk about that and kind of what went into your psyche from then on.
Yeah, that was certainly the pivotal moment, I think, of my entire life. Having grown up an athlete, having had that identity, a big fish in kind of a small pond, it was really earth shattering to figure out that I wasn't going to, well, at the time didn't know this, but ever get back to the point where I had once been. I was walking out of my last AP exam, my senior year of high school, and it's almost like out of a movie. Got to the final stair of the staircase and felt this tinge in my glute and thought I'd pulled something, and turns out I had a really awful herniated disc that was impinging a number of nerves going down my leg. And we battled conservatively for a number of months to rectify the problem before I went off for my freshman year of college. Unfortunately, it just continued to get worse. I ended up getting surgery my freshman year, redshirting my freshman year after having recruited a team to come out to Minnesota around me, and really just leaned on their support for that first year. Rehabbed myself back to playing condition after receiving, back surgery that winter, and got back on the court only to re-hurt it again. The first practice at 6:30 in the middle of October, my sophomore year. And, after that came a lot of tears and a lot of really hard conversations and phone calls back home to figure out what came next. Who was I? I was already starting to feel, this is getting taken away, and now what? This is why I'm here. And that was a really eye-opening moment. And I'd say the very beginning of my identity searching process. And I was about 19, almost 20 years old at the time. That was kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, we focus a lot on the transition out of sport. But sometimes just more of just, okay, you're done. You graduated college, or you're fortunate to play professionally, and whether you get injured playing professionally or just don't quite make it. But there's a lot of athletes that are challenged. Like some aren't as fortunate, and they're kind of done after high school.
Right.
And again, like we talked about, you've been playing your whole life, and then all of a sudden it's kind of taken away from you. From an identity perspective, I'm sure you were Mike the basketball player, right?
I was through and through, at least in my eyes, right? And I was lucky enough to have a support system around me, and my parents, specifically my mom, who constantly reminded me that I was more than the sport, more than the newspaper headline. And that was something that really never resonated with me, because that's who I wanted to be, was the basketball player. But I was very lucky that I had people in my corner that were constantly reminding me that I was more than that. It helped to lighten the blow a little bit. But try telling a 19-year-old kid or 20-year-old kid that they're not going to live out their dream of playing any level of college sports, especially the one that they've come to love and that's helped them through so much. It's truly, as one mentor once told me, the ball stops bouncing for everyone at some point. And for me, that ball seemed to have been stolen from me. And that didn't feel fair at the time. But I think in hindsight, it was one of the greatest blessings, because it made me really start to figure out who I was separate from who I was as an athlete.
No, that's great, and I think it's that's the big thing too. Looking like how do you move forward from that situation? You said you kind of got into some different things, trying to figure out your identity, but ultimately, I guess, how did it affect you from a standpoint of, here you are, like always working out, doing all this stuff, you're in this routine. Now all of a sudden it's just disrupted. Like how did you handle that?
Yeah, that was the hardest part for me, was, losing the identity of an athlete. Felt like I couldn't do those things anymore, which, in hindsight was totally incorrect. I started seeking out, different identities that probably weren't healthy for me, transitioning into a different lifestyle that kind of revolved around more socialization and nights out, and really trying to identify, like, who am I in this world now? Like, what am I going to do with my life? I actually have to focus on how I'm going to make money and provide for a family as I get older, and those things were things that had never really crossed my mind before. And so I tried on all these identities. Some were good for me and some were really bad for me, and that's what kind of took over my 20s, was trying to find that version of me. What city was it that I was meant to be in? Was it Charleston? Was it Charlotte? Was it Atlanta? Was it Boston? Who was I supposed to be? Was I, a finance guy? Was I a strategy guy? Was I just a sales guy? But none of these were me as an athlete, because I felt like that couldn't be me anymore, because I'd lost that. And that was the hardest part about the process, was understanding, just because you weren't out on the field in a competitive setting, or on the court in a competitive setting, that you couldn't be that person anymore, with everything else that came with it, from discipline to really taking care of your body, really watching what you eat, really focused on your mental and physical health. It was that was the greatest realization after 10 years of soul searching and identity searching. Realizing that I could be that athlete again, despite the lack of competition, was massive for me.
Yeah, definitely rough. So why don't maybe give some words of advice to athletes as they do come upon that point of transitioning out of sport?
It's really the ball. First of all, seek out mentors, right? Seek out people that have been through that transition before. I love talking with college athletes today that have that upcoming deadline of the ball is going to stop bouncing for me, or whatever your sport may be, and really talk to them about the realities of what happens after that transition. It's not always, it's actually very rarely a positive feeling. And I hear it all too often from those in my network that they were lost and they didn't know where to go afterwards. And that identity crisis is something that's very real. So I'd say identify a mentor, whether it's somebody that you know already. We are blessed with an amazing ecosystem of technology tools today. Reach out to people that maybe you look up to in social media settings or otherwise. and figure out how they manage that, figure out what tips they can give you, because it's going to be unique to your own specific situation and circumstance more than anything else. So I'd say make sure you find almost that buddy system to get you through the hump just post college.
Yeah, and that's great because you do need that. I mean, it's a team effort, and we definitely encourage. You're not in it alone. A lot of athletes, people in general, go through transition out of where they're at. But from an athlete perspective, a lot of athletes have faced it. So definitely reach out to athletes, just like Mike's saying, and just get that mentor and know that people are there to support you. We're gonna talk obviously about Move More Collective. I'm excited to hear about that, and the audience as well. But talk about being an athlete and becoming an entrepreneur. Like, how do you feel that the skill sets kind of translate?
It feels very natural, right? I think everything that you learn growing up playing sports, I alluded to it at the beginning of the segment, it translates whether you're going into a corporate profession or you're deciding to go out on your own and do something in entrepreneurship. There's some really hard skills and principles that you learn through sport, the discipline, the time management, the ability to communicate with the ability to push towards a deadline and a goal, to execute, to strategize. There are all of these elements that we pick up during our sporting years that are just so transferable regardless of the direction you go in. But specifically around entrepreneurship, look, I never thought you'd find me in this seat. I started to climb that corporate ladder and go that direction. And I just realized that, I was building somebody else's dream, and I had dreams of my own that I wanted to, to pursue and change, that I wanted to have a hand in. And that wasn't something I could do from behind the scenes. I think the last thing I'll say on that is really like leadership, right? For those of us that have been fortunate enough to be captains of various sports teams, to lead teams, for people to look up to you for the guidance and the leadership to be successful, having that not taken away, but you seek that out again. You want to lead. You want to be the one that takes the good and the bad, that owns the organization. And I think that's something that was the next stepping stone in my progression of identity recognition, was realizing that I wanted to be that leader again, even if it wasn't on the court.
That's great. So now let's talk a little Move More Collective. Tell us what you're doing and some of the exciting things that are happening there.
Yeah, it's a great space, right? Like I was saying, my 20s took me through a roller coaster of emotion. The logo you see on the chest here means more than just my initials. The MMC here, which very few people know, is kind of the creation of Move More Collective, but it also signifies the journey that we all go on, both from a personal and identity discovery process, and just trying to continue and maintain this forward progress in life, right? There are highs, there are lows, there are troughs and valleys, and there are peaks in that journey. And Move More Collective is really built around being a social mission, and something that was very destructive for me during my 20s was following societal norms of what social culture has led us to believe is normal life. We're so focused on physical wellness. We've started to really shine light on mental wellness, but nobody wants to talk on social wellness and what that really means. And in our world, it's really a pyramid or a triangle, I guess you should say, where it's physical, mental, and social wellness. And very rarely can you have all three in this day and age, right? You can do things that are good for your body and your mind, but that's usually at the sacrifice of going out or having a social life, right? You can do things that might be physically and socially good, but that's really at the sacrifice of like what it could be doing to you on the mental side. And so what our goal was with Move More Collective was to find an organization that really strongly pushed forward this narrative that you can have all three, that social wellness can naturally coexist with your physical and mental wellness. And so the first embodiment of that was our alternative nightlife series called Midnight Moves. It implements both, fitness, socialization, and then combines it with a zero proof after party lifestyle component, all in a one night setting that allows people to go out, get a little bit of movement, get your neurotransmitters firing, get the endorphins flowing, but at the same time socialize and leave you feeling okay afterwards, but make you feel like you had a night out. No emphasis on this zero proof, non-alcoholic nightlife. When we give it that kind of power, that's when it starts to continue to be the focal point of all the conversations. It's, oh, that's a sober event. That's not how you should be looking at it. You should be looking at it as this is us getting back to the way things should have been for a long, long
Right.
time. And so I think that's the narrative that we're trying to change is you can do this uncompromisingly, and that there is a really good life awaiting on the other side if you decide to mix in a non-alcoholic night for your nightlife routine.
Oh, it sounds amazing. The thing popped in my mind when you said midnight moves. Was that kind of coined that way because of the MM or?
It was in a sense. I think, for us, it was capturing the essence of nightlife and also capturing the essence of movement. Everything we do is kind of a double entendre, right? So move more is, yeah, it's about physical movement, but it's about moving the needle further on what we've already started to progress in the wellness space. There are amazing run clubs. There are amazing wellness social clubs, specifically here in South Florida. But nobody was really solving for that high risk nightlife hour that's been so deeply dominated by the bar and the club scene. And so our goal was, hey, let's take a chance here. Let's be risk taking and move more in the direction of where we want to be. And so everything that we've done has somewhat been a double entendre or an acronym.
Okay, great. And so where are these events typically? Like, give us an example.
Yeah, right now we're solely focused in the West Palm Beach market, so Palm Beach County. We've had a number of inbounds from across the country, which has been extremely promising in just about a year of being in operation. They happen on the second Friday traditionally of each month to keep it very, predictable for our attendees. They know when to look for, our different announcements and when to block off the calendar to be healthy around the clock. And so right now it's just in South Florida. We've got a couple geographies carved out with strong networks already on the ground that we think would be, really natural fits for what we're doing. It really just depends how quickly and how, far we can move this needle in this demographic first and see, we're battling upstream a bit, right? This is something that's been around for generations and generations, and telling people to change that routine is not something that happens overnight. And so we're committed to the long haul, and we're having so much fun along the way.
That's great. It's almost kind of like being down here. It used to be you're playing softball or you're playing kickball and then you're done and then you're going out and drinking. So maybe a similar concept, but you're doing something without the drinking part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the research all shows that this is the way that things are starting to trend, right? I've wanted it for a while, and now we're seeing, generations start to become more informed on the ill effects of alcohol on the body, on recovery, on mental health, on everything across the board. And we can say drink in moderation, but there's been a shortage of drinking in moderation, specifically in our culture, dating back to old media and films that show the fraternity and college lifestyle and all this glamour of blacking out and having a crazy night out. We're just trying to reel it in a bit. We're not saying you need to go sober. We're just saying you need to do this in a sustainable way. And a glass of wine here or there is like what was intended, or a beer here or there is what was intended. It wasn't meant to take over society and sit as the focal point and the main activity for everything that we do.
Right. And then what's the age group? Is it across the board or is it more targeted specifically?
Yeah, we thought that it was going to find more of a fit with the 21 to 30 demographic, maybe like 25, 35. We've seen people from across the board show interest. We've had people reaching out as early as, 18, 19 years old. Unfortunately, we are traditionally a 21 plus event, and wanting to come out and do the run or do the workout that we have planned, and then partake in the crazy DJ after party that we put on for the 2 hours after the workout. And we've seen people of all ages. In the strongest and kind of most unlikely demographic for me has been this young adult, almost mid-adult demographic, with young kids still looking to go out, but do so in a responsible way. And want to do so in a way that makes them, leaves them feeling good and gets them out there and gets them active. And so that's an area where we're really interested and excited to dive more deeply and figure out how we can make it as frictionless as possible for the young adult demographic to come out, enjoy, and leave them feeling good, but like they partied like they did back in their 20s.
That's great. And then what's kind of the ratio typically of male to female?
We've seen a great split so far. I think it's landed, very well. We've done everything very organically to date. We've grown organically and through word of mouth, and we haven't noticed, much of a difference between, the male and female population. I think it's really just, based on the fact that social media has targeted both in the same way. We've had a number of things go viral on our page, Move More Collective. I think it's just had some incredible reach to both sides of the aisle, if you will. And so we don't see too much difference. It's pretty.
Is there a cost to the people participating? Like how does that work?
Yeah. What we provide is a premium experience, right? We haven't cut any corners. We've tried to keep things incredibly limited. And you'll find this across the wellness social club environment in South Florida. There's a low entry fee to getting in. The way we like to frame our ticket prices is, it's really the cost of a cover if you were to go out to the bar, maybe a cover and a drink, and everything that you get with it goes far and beyond what those two expenses get you in the traditional nightlife scene. We provide a full open bar with alternative beverages, so zero proof beverages that introduce you to a wide range of different alternative beverage types of different active ingredients, Kana Kava, occasionally a THC or CBD, you name the legal but non-alcoholic state shifting substance, and it gives you back just what you put in. And so yes, there's a small ticket price to it, but we think it's worth every penny.
That's great. So how can people find you?
Yeah, I plugged in a second ago. So Instagram is really our home at Move More Collective. We have a few derivative accounts that come off of that you'll see as you go there. And we're actually it's very timely, we're about to launch our first website. So it'll be live if it's not already live. It was, about real time with this interview, but it should be live by end of day today. And we're really excited for the way that it shows off our place in this amazing wellness ecosystem that just continues to grow day by day. It's a really special place for community and for overall wellness.
What's the website domain going to be?
movemorecollective.com. We're going to keep it nice and simple for you all.
Gotta like that. And people, I'm sure, could probably find you on Instagram as well and LinkedIn.
They can for sure. Yeah, we've created a few different accounts to outline some of the content we're doing with different wellness brands that we work with today. One of which is at Founding Mover on Instagram. The personal handle for myself is at Cavallaro. And we've just got an amazing team behind us too. I've never wanted to sit here and be the face of what we're doing. I've tried to keep my face off of it for a number of months as we were getting started, because for us, it's really more about the movement. We've partnered with Active Minds, which is a mental health nonprofit, to help amplify our impact across the country and give us more of a voice. And so we tend to just, we box out, up in weight class, and it's, mainly due to the amazing team that I have alongside me and that have given me so many of their resources with very little in exchange until we really catch the traction and the momentum that we need to become a prominent name in the space.
All right. Well, this is awesome. People, you definitely have to go check out Move More Collective.
Come on out
and start doing those events. And you can find us on alumnidirect.com. Our YouTube channel is on there, and that's where you find the podcast, as well as across Spotify, Apple, and the other networks. And each week I always like to say that it's a major issue with the transition out of sport. And so the athletes that we have on just give so many great nuggets, as I call them. And, Mike gave us a lot of great nuggets today. And, again, thank you so much, Mike. And please, people, go out and, listen and follow. And we want to make an impact and help as many people as we can.
Yeah, Rob, first of all, kudos to you. This is amazing and definitely deeply needed. Something that doesn't get enough attention. So this is an amazing initiative you got going on here, and Alumni Direct continues to push that forward through its network itself. So just a really, really good cause. Appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure.